All right, hi team. I wanted to create this video in response to the scenario we were just talking about on the huddle this morning about whether or not a buyer can switch to financing when they have an offer, their offer accepted via a cash only offer. And the answer to that is absolutely yes, that they can. And this comes up often, so often enough that where it's actually built directly into the RPA to handle this type of scenario. So if you scroll to page 5, the top of page 5, you have item 6C, which states right here, buyer stated financing. It essentially breaks down that the buyer can pursue the financing options in this agreement, or if they wanted to do some sort of alternate form of financing. And this again relies to even all cash offers. The seller has no obligation to cooperate, but at the same time, they shall not interfere with the closing. Now, as long as the original major terms of the offer, for example, the deadlines, the price, close of escrow dates, and things like contingencies, if they're not affected, then nothing material in the contract has changed. And therefore, the buyer can take advantage of good rates or whatever their financial advisor has told them. They have the opportunity to do whatever they need to do. As long as the money shows up at the specified date and time, the seller cannot interfere with it. Now, this paragraph also states for the buyer, if you're going to do this, you're doing so at your own risk. You don't have the loan contingencies or anything else that would normally come along with a finance offer to protect you. So this typically would only recommend it for someone who can close with cash, but wants to take advantage of the market or something like that. But ultimately, the seller cannot get in the way of a buyer wanting to switch their financing abilities or options. Now, just this works out in our favor because we're representing the buyer, but we always want to know what the counter to that is, right? So if we're representing a seller and the buyer is switching, and of course, if the seller is really upset for whatever reason, is there anything that they can do to prevent this? Which, I mean, in reality, they shouldn't, because the buyer has a right to do so. But if they wanted to make the life more difficult for the buyer, here's what we would do for the sellers. They cannot cancel or posture or threaten a buyer for switching from cash to loan. However, they can make their life more difficult by enforcing the notice to performs within 2 days before the deadlines. So if there's a contingency to be removed or any sort of deadline in the contract, they can issue this notice to perform 2 days before it's due, which basically means that on the moment or on the day that it's due, if it's not completed, then they can cancel. The other thing they can do is to make life more difficult is they can deny access to the property, and in this case, to the appraiser. So if you look at section 3L3, which is right here, they've added this line, informational access to property. Standard is 17 days, unless otherwise noted. So if the seller wanted to make this difficult and they said, no, absolutely, you cannot get financing, and I'm going to stand in your way. If it hasn't been done within their first 17 days, the seller can deny access to the appraiser to gain access to the property, and then therefore the loan can't be completed. And so they can deny the ability of a buyer to get a loan that way. Again, this doesn't make a lot of sense because it shouldn't matter to the seller how the money gets there, as long as it gets to the finish line at the specified date and time. It should all be the same. And that's why that original clause was built in. Hope you guys found this informational. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me for further clarification. Hope this helps.